Hey guys, it's Thursday, 2:05 p.m. on December 7th, 2017, and I gotta ask you guys, how come nobody's pointing out that Trump just punked out the entire world with this Jerusalem thing? I don't know if you guys are familiar with what's happened, so I'm going to give you a summary here. Basically, over the last 72 hours, Trump has gone onto the world stage before world leaders and announced that he's moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which is a big deal. Okay, that will I don't even need, you guys can look into what the implications of that are going to be. However, what Trump actually did was something quite different. And the difference between his words and his actions reveals a strategy here that really needs some consideration. Because basically, Trump just punked the entire world. He punked out the Muslims and he punked out the Zionists. And that is a crazy strategy. I don't know why he would do this, but that's what he did. Now let me explain to you how this worked. In 1995, the United States signed a law into effect called the Jerusalem Embassy Act of 1995. It lays out 17 reasons why the United States believes that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. It gives the president 6 months to start moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which means, since this law went into effect in 1996, that we should have our embassy no longer located in Tel Aviv, but it should be in Jerusalem already, right? Because here's the consequence. If it doesn't happen, it says that the funds authorized to be appropriated for the acquisition and maintenance of buildings abroad for the Department of State will be cut in half. Basically, what happens with this bill is that if the president does not move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, then the State Department doesn't get any of these funds appropriated, or it doesn't get 50% of the funds appropriated to manage any embassy anywhere in the world. And yet, for some reason, here we are in 2017, and that embassy is still located in Tel Aviv. Why? Well, because there is this convenient little clause here in Section 7. It's called the Presidential Waiver. And what this basically says is that the president may suspend this move if it presents Congress every 6 months with a statement that it's necessary to protect the national security of the United States. The president may suspend such limitation for an additional 6 months period at the end of any period during which the suspension is in effect under subsection if the president determines and reports to Congress in advance of the additional suspension that the additional suspension is necessary to protect the national security interests of the United States. In other words, ever since 1996, every president has been submitting a waiver to Congress, literally every 6 months. That means Obama has submitted this waiver 8 times. It means that Trump himself has already submitted this waiver once. Now, here's what's interesting to consider, that for the last 72 hours, Trump has gone before the entire world and said, we're doing it, we're moving from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and yet he signed this waiver which says he's not. The whole world has just been punked by Trump. It reminds me of this phrase that we used to have in the 90s, where we used to say, psych. You know, like if I asked a friend to go get my purse out of the car and they came in and said, here's your purse, but I took all the money out. And then they'd laugh and say, psych. You know, it's being punked. We've been punked by the Trump administration, not just us. The Muslims have been punked, and I don't know how many Muslims actually would understand this law. I mean, if Americans don't even know it's on the books, I don't expect very many, Muslim countries to be familiar with this. Because it sure does look like Trump is planning to move that embassy, but in effect, he's maintained the status quo. His action is to forestall this move, just like every president has been doing every 6 months since 1995. Now, I don't know if the Jews are behind that. I don't know if the Zionists are sitting back saying, yeah, we knew he was going to do this. We weren't getting all excited about it, because it looks to me that all the evangelical Zionists are very excited about this. See, guys, words have meaning and actions speak louder than words. Trump's actions here should speak a lot louder than his words, but I don't know how many people know his actions. So that's why I'm calling attention to this, that he did sign this waiver. Whatever he said about moving the embassy to Jerusalem, he was lying. He's not going to do it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have signed this waiver. This is shocking to me. So when I hear these guys here, James Corbett, and this guy here, James Pilato at Media Monarchy, talk about this, I have to wonder, how come they're not pointing out the fact that Trump just punked the whole world? Let's listen to what James Pilato has to say.
The war in Afghanistan, North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Officials said another consideration in signing this waiver. So he made this big announcement, but essentially signed a waiver that said, whoa, we're not going to rush into it. It's still going to take probably a couple of years. So the part of signing this waiver was avoiding a major cut in State Department funding mandated under a 1995 law if the embassy does not move to Jerusalem. Every president has waived the law since its passage. They said immediately designating the U.S. consulate in Jerusalem as an embassy was out of the question for security and logistical reasons. Security and logistical reasons being quite the understatement, James. There's a lot to this story, and I think a lot of tentacles, if we will, that kind of spread out, and I think I've got an interesting related to this story. But I'll throw it back to you as one of probably the bigger geopolitical moves being made.
Yes.
So let me point out here that what James Corbett is going to go forward here and say is that what Trump just did was incite unnecessary conflict, right? But what he doesn't say is that it was all just hype, because what Trump actually did was the opposite of what he said he was going to do, okay? Now, there is a big problem here because, well, I'll just let this keep playing.
Absolutely. And the startling thing is that it is like throwing grease on a grease fire or something. I mean, this is just, even if you were a Jewish supremacist, Israel first, Israel can do no wrong kind of person, this is an incredible, insane move to be making at this particular moment that will have absolutely no other consequence than to inflame a region that's already very much inflamed.
Okay, so he's right. It does just inflame a region that's already inflamed, but he said it's a move. There was no move. That's my point, is that, you guys, there was no move here. What Trump did and what he said were two different things. He signed another security deposit for Tel Aviv for the next 6 months. See, so this is where Corbett's kind of missing the point here, is that much like firing blanks in an open theater, you know, he got up and he pretended that he was going to fire this gun, and he pulled a trigger, but it was blanks. There's no meat to this. There's no bullet behind this. This was just a bunch of noise to get everybody to run out of a crowded area, freaking out as if there were real bullets fired.
And that goes beyond the actual politics of this and the fact that, oh, surprise, surprise, make America great again meant make Israel great again. Wow.
That's not actually what happened, though, see? Trump did not do this for Israel. I'm not defending Trump. I'm just telling you exactly what happened here.
Oh, what a surprise. What a bold move from the Trumper-in-chief. And, in case you couldn't have told from the fact that he was literally making campaign endorsements for Netanyahu back in the day, and is friends with Lucky Larry Silverstein, and has pledged to AIPAC, I'm going to be the best president for Israel, the best, strongest friend Israel's ever seen. The Israel aid is not going to stop under the Trump administration, so anyone who had any of those delusions, you cannot cling to those delusions anymore, but don't.
Actually, this is where I challenge James. I want to say, James, buddy, look what he did, not what he said. Yes, he went and he pissed everybody off. He got everybody all excited about this. But his actions were not to move the embassy. Actually, he forestalled it another 6 months. You see, this is the part that we can't forget. We can't ignore this, because Trump just went out and made a huge charade to make it look like he's really a Zionist supporter. But for some reason, when it actually came to signing the paperwork to do what he was saying, he didn't do it.
Worry, I have already seen how the Trump is God Emperor-in-Chief crew are already doing their mental pretzel knots to justify this. Either they are now 100% on board, yes, Israel 100%, and screw the Palestinians and all that, or they're going, well, yeah, but it's the deep state making Trump do this. Despite the fact that he's been promising to do this, he's 100% committed himself to being the best friend.
He's 100% committed to being the best friend of Israel. But you know what, you guys? What he didn't do it. That's the thing that bothers me. Not that I look, don't get me wrong. I do not want the United States Embassy to move to Jerusalem. Okay, so let me make this very, very clear. I don't want that to happen. I am not in support of this embassy move. But Trump said he was going to do something, and he didn't do it. He actually did the opposite. And that's what seems like James Corbett and this guy, James Pilato, are missing. Okay, so words have meaning, and actions speak louder than words.
That Israel's ever had in the White House, which would be one hell of a statement to make true, and maybe he's going to make that true. Again, this is just a crazy maneuver that will do nothing but inflame an already inflamed region. This is absolute craziness, and as you say from the related stories that we can back this up with, it's only going to get crazier and crazier.
Okay, so now I want to distinguish something here for James and point out it was not a maneuver. The maneuver was his words, but he actually maintained the status quo. Really important to distinguish between President Trump's words and his actions.
Absolutely. Well, and even, of course, in that article in The Hill, which doesn't mention the evangelical part until a bit down in the article, but that is a huge, fundamental, important part of this story. Because basically you have a huge sector of people that are super excited about this, because this is supposed to happen, and this just hastens all the wars that are supposed to happen, and that means Jesus is coming back. Hallelujah. Holy moly.
Okay, this is where I'm going to take issue with James Pilato and their accuracy in reporting. These guys claim to be accurate reporters, then let's use the right definitions for words, guys, okay? Let's use the right definition of words, because here's the deal. You can't get the term hurricane from just inventing it for yourself. You can't just invent the wind speeds for hurricane. A hurricane is 74-mile-an-hour winds. If you don't have 74-mile-an-hour winds, you don't have a hurricane. Well, where do you get the definition from hurricane? From the agreed upon standards of what the scientific term is, hurricane is defined as, okay? It's pretty much a universally accepted standard definition. What about words like Jew and words like Israel? Where did we get those? What do those words mean? They have specific meanings, and they didn't come from the Bhagavad Gita, okay? The term Jew and the term Israel are the most misappropriated or misused words in the English language these days, or maybe in every language these days. Because the word Israel and the word Jew, two words, came specifically from the Bible, not the New English American Standard Dictionary, not the Bhagavad Gita, not the Quran, but Israel is a word that comes expressly and uniquely from the Bible. And it's very important to use that word appropriately. Same with the term Jew. Let's look in the Bible how Israel is defined by God himself. God himself specifically closes the door on the definition of Israel in Micah 5:2. He says, "But you, Bethlehem, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth to me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from of old, from ancient days." What this is saying is that the ruler from Bethlehem is the governor of Israel. So Israel is defined by God's people who are ruled by this leader from Bethlehem. New Testament closes out the definition of who that person is. When it quotes this verse again and applies it to Jesus Christ in Matthew 2:6, it says, "O Bethlehem, and in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Right here, the door closes. End of conversation. Israel is the people governed by this shepherd from Bethlehem. That's it. It's in the Old Testament. It's in the New Testament. God defines Israel as his people who are governed by the shepherd from Bethlehem. Now, let's go ask any Christian alive who that shepherd from Bethlehem is. It's almost Christmas time. You guys should know. Oh, little town of Bethlehem. Who was born there, guys? Who's the shepherd from Bethlehem? Well, that's the ruler of Israel. That's how we know who Israel is. Israel is God's people governed by Jesus Christ. Not Netanyahu, not Ben-Gurion. Christian evangelicals, if you guys can't get the definition of the word Israel straight, you guys are not Christians. This is where I hold these guys accountable. Even though I understand that these guys may not have read the Bible, it doesn't matter. They are obligated to define terms according to their point of origin and what they actually mean. Israel is God's people governed by Jesus Christ, not some messed up state in Palestine run by a bunch of Zionist people who, interestingly enough, call themselves Jews. Another term that is uniquely defined in the Bible. What is a Jew? A Jew is somebody that comes from the tribe of Judah. Now, interestingly enough, we haven't been able to tell who was from the tribe of Judah since 70 AD. You guys, let's take a peek and do some math here. It is now 2017. The genealogical records, which were in the temple, okay, that tells who came from what tribe, burned down in 70 AD. That means we haven't been able to define a Jew for 1,947 years, okay? If we haven't been able to tell who's a Jew from 1,947 years ago, then what the hell are we doing letting these people define themselves as Jews? They can't be Jews. They have no proof that they're Jews because we haven't had genealogical records since the temple burned down in 70 AD. Now, what's very interesting to me is that the Bible clearly outlines this group of people who will be the synagogue of Satan, according to Jesus Christ himself. They're going to call themselves Jews, but they're not going to be from the tribe of Judah. And what does Jesus call them? He calls them the synagogue of Satan. This is not to be overlooked, you guys. It's a slander to say that you are a Jew when you're not a Jew, and it puts you in the synagogue of Satan. Look, you guys, I'm not being racist. I'm just telling you, based on the biblical definitions of words like Israel and Jew, we are dealing with anti-Christ. Quite literally, you guys, it doesn't get any more clear and literal than this. Israel is God's people governed by Jesus Christ, not a nation in Palestine that is anti-Christ. Okay? A Jew is somebody who comes from the tribe of Judah, which we haven't been able to discern for 1,947 years. So words have meaning and actions speak louder than words. And I'm not exactly sure what is going on here, but it's important to call people to accountability in the terms that they use and the actions they take. So I'm just wondering, what was Trump thinking in punking out the whole world? It's time that we start looking at these things and use the appropriate definitions for the words as they're defined from the context and where we get the words in the first place.